What the Scooby Doo are the three principles? It's what we are exploring. So,
Now, in
first of
case
all, yeah.
people like me who don't relate with Scooby Doo, then we'll just go with the word. What the hell are the three principles? Okay.
What the
You
heck
guys-
star are they?
Okay. Then we'll use that the beeper. Okay. In the recording, maybe.
So you guys know who Scooby Doo is, though? Yeah.
I do, yes.
I've heard of Scooby Doo, but I'm not a big fan of Scooby. Maybe
okay.
I don't connect with Scooby Doo.
You don't
I've never,
connect with Scooby Doo.
Yeah, I've never seen any comic of Scooby Doo, so that's why I'm not very sure.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like the oak tree, banyan tree analogy.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Cool.
It's not part of my my world, possibly. I don't.
Yeah, not part of your thinking. There we go.
Maybe he's still in the Mickey and Donald world still.
Oh yes, Mickey, Donald, and Tom and Jerry. Boy.
Okay, so what the Tom and Jerry other principles might have worked.
Yeah, that works. Yes.
So
yeah.
Well, what's going through my mind is that we're streaming live onto Facebook. I've no idea if anyone's watching or not, but I don't know who will be watching if people are watching, whether it's anyone who's got background and have some knowledge of the three principles or people who are completely new. So what's your sense, guys? Where do we start? Do we start maybe sharing some of our own experiences about the principles, or
I think
just defining them?
That makes absolute sense that we share our own principles, and then we can also point towards it.
Yeah.
Cool.
And answer the question at the end of it for somebody who's seeking the answer. Okay, now tell me the answer.
If only.
If only. I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you the first time I heard about the principles was sitting around a dining table in a little village in France, and Leslie, you were actually sharing the principles. I remember it was a cloudy day, and it was 4 p.m. local time.
Wow.
Yes, I was sitting right opposite to you on the other end of the dining table, and Mudassir was on my left, and I remember we started speaking. To be honest, I don't remember what words you used, but there is something that I noticed. All right, so it's been what? It's been 1, 2. It's been 2 years now.
Yeah.
Yes, it's 2 years now. Yeah. And I don't remember much in terms of words, but I remember the effect on me. And one thing after that, I've heard many people share what the principles are, and one thing that I've noticed is they keep saying, look towards where we are pointing. Don't focus on the words. Like every time they say that, I'm like, what else am I supposed to focus on? If not the words, because that's what I'm hearing. I'm actually hearing the words. So then it actually took me some time to realize that what they are sharing is like they are attempting to define, let's say, the taste of, let's say, someone's favorite food. So there is only so much that you can actually put it in words, but because taste is a very different sense altogether, and they're looking to give it words.
Mm.
And that took me some time to actually realize that, hey, okay, now it makes sense why they keep saying, look at where we are pointing, don't look at my finger, look towards the angle where we are pointing, and all that. Yeah, so that was, I see myself as someone who's like an outsider, like a rebel in the three principles world. And that's how I continue to see myself, because something that does not appeal to my logic is something
Mm.
that I totally detest, right? And for me to actually have my work, my like the body of work that I'm actually doing to move that towards the principles, despite saying what I just said,
Mm.
is logic defying to me.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I get that. When I first came across the principles, I kind of dismissed it. I had a little look, had a little bit of an exploration, and just thought, no, sort of emperor's new clothes, that kind of. There's
Yeah.
nothing. Yeah, I don't get this. But it was only that I'd mentioned it to a friend, and she had then gone on and explored it, and I spoke with her sometime later, and there was such a change in just how she was, the ease in herself. Um, and when I asked, so what have you been doing? What course have you been on? What, personal development have you been doing? She was like, no, the principles thing that you told me about. I'm like, oh, what? So I was like, there must be something in this. But I was so frustrated when I first came across it because it didn't immediately make sense to my rational mind. It does now. I mean, I can come up with a logical explanation now. Um, but that's not where you get the benefit from it. I can understand it logically and rationally, but that made no difference, I think, is the thing. It's like, well, yeah, I understand that. So, and it was only when I began to look at what the implications of that were in my actual day-to-day life. How, you know, what does it mean in my everyday living? And then when I began to see it in my own life, then what was just concepts that seemed like, yeah, I get that, but so what? It became, oh my Tom and Jerry. There is something in this, and it's mind blowing. And from that, uh, just very gently and subtly, my experience of life has changed in extraordinary ways. I mean, us doing this together now live on Facebook 2 years later would never have predicted, and here we are.
Yeah.
And interestingly, we are talking about the beginning of our journeys.
Mm.
So when I look back, um, I heard at the same time Mo's heard because we were in the same program. Okay,
Yeah.
but my experience of listening was different. It's what I noticed. My experience was I asked that question like, what the hell are you talking about? Okay. I didn't ask you, but in my mind, I was, if somebody's watching this and if you're going like, okay, get to the point. Okay. Like I was them. Okay.
Mm.
Because that's a very logical thing. A question and an answer.
Mm.
Okay. A straight jacket approach. And I
Mm.
have lived that approach all my life. Okay. And when I learned coaching, it was neuroscience. So you don't believe anything if there is no facts.
Mm.
And I was a coach already. So whatever you were saying, I wanted to know, what are you talking about? Just tell me, what is it? You're saying something, I know, but what is it?
Mm.
Okay. And when so I was finding, I was kind of going through the maze of words. Okay, now the answer is coming. I realized I was looking for something I could recognize.
Mm. Mhm.
Now, when I look back, okay, now I've been in this for 2 years now, and I was looking for something and I recognize, and obviously, what I recognize comes from my archive, my database of knowledge. And what you are pointing and what we are pointing together today is something which is the truth,
Mm.
which which can be, like was said, pointed at. Like, okay, look at the truth. Okay, there is the truth, but you can't say this is the truth. You can't
Mm.
put it in. You can't capsule it. You can't put it in a jar. So, so I was angry. I was super angry. In fact, it was more than anger. I was enraged. My body was shivering. I didn't know you. I would have probably hit you. I have no idea. I was so angry. And at some point of time, when I gave up, I have no clue what she's saying. I'm gonna give up. Okay? But that wasn't conscious again.
Mm.
But here is what happened. I don't remember when that happened, the shift from anger to absolute peace.
Mm.
But something was going in, not knowing what was going in. My body stopped shivering, but I started feeling cold.
Mm.
Yeah, I was able to feel the atmosphere. I was able to feel it was a slightly rainy day,
Yeah.
and 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 that day was a little chilly for me. But I noticed a little peace, a little calm. Yeah. And the rest is history in a way. We kept in touch after that. I don't think I ever asked you, okay, tell me, what are the principles? It's very easy to say mind, consciousness, thought. Now, those aren't the principles, yet those are the principles. Now, isn't that the irony here, what we are
Mm.
pointing at? Now, so the way it appears to me now, as much as we are filling the silence in this space we have, but what we are pointing at is the silence itself, the space between the words.
Mm.
So now, if somebody is going like, dude, what are you talking about? I think the best answer only comes from inside. If you really want to understand the principles, my invitation for them would be just listen. I love the words to go in and see what comes from inside, not through us.
Mm.
Okay,
Mm.
what comes from inside. Okay, because that is your answer. Because for me, the principles, what has the effect of that is obviously it's become part of our work. That's one little part of it. Let me put it that way. Yes, just I would say the two ways of looking at everything has changed for me in a way because the world looks very different.
Mhm.
But technically, nothing has changed. Again, irony. Okay, if I actually look at it, yeah, everything is the same. My life is the same. My atmosphere is the same. People are the same. My business is the same. Okay, um, but everything seems different.
Mm. Mhm.
So that will be my simplest way of saying, like, what did I really get from the principles? I would say a real calm approach to seeing life, a real close look at life. Now, whatever that means. For me, that just means there are many ways to live. The only way to live to me now is It's not think about living, but living.
Mm.
There's a difference. So, so what we are pointing at is that.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember you telling me before, Maud, that when you listened to me, you were really angry. I remember that, and then peaceful. And I have no idea what I said that day. It was one of the first times I'd shared the principles in our group, and I remember thinking I have no idea if anyone will hear anything from this because I'm very new at sharing. Maybe one of the first times, like I say. Um, and that you heard something seems quite miraculous, really, given I was unskilled at the time. But it does seem to me to be an expression of the principles that what us working together has just unfolded. We've now done some courses, run some courses together, and it's just felt effortless, which has not been my experience of things in the past, pre-principles. I think one of the biggest things I've got is things that I take on now feel effortless. Doesn't mean to say there's not work involved. I might at one level put in a lot of effort, but it feels like effort um, in line with where I'm going. Whereas I think pre-principles, I often felt like I was going against the grain. So there was a lot of effort, but there was also a lot of friction against that effort. So now things feel much more effortless in the sense that I feel like I'm working with the grain. So the energy I put in doesn't feel like it has so much resistance. It feels like it kind of glides. And that's so different to how I used to live. Every day is so much richer. It's incredible. And from such a simple, in a way, such a simple understanding. So simple, in fact, that it's so easy to miss, which is what I did originally. I kind of understood it conceptually, but I didn't understand how that could transform how I experienced my experience or experienced life. And when I began to get glimpses of the implications of it, life transforming, really. So many ways. If you just, one of the things I think I've got is just feel so much more at ease in my own skin and with other people. Just it's endless, really. So yes.
And so one line that comes to mind, Leslie, as you shared what you shared, is there's not much to do.
Hmm.
So there's not much to do is the one word that actually came to mind as you shared what you shared. And sometimes like when I think about that now, like when you see there is not much to do. Uh, so this afternoon when I had lunch, I had carrot, I had beetroot, I had fish, I had rice, some curry, drank water, and apart from my wife cooking that food, all right, and me putting putting the food on the plate and eating, what other effort did I put to actually bring that carrot, that beetroot, that rice, fish onto my plate? I didn't do anything. It, I don't even know who planted those veggies. Someone did something, and even let's say the farmer grew those veggies, but after putting those seeds actually turn into those carrots and the beetroot.
Hmm.
and, and some fish laid eggs, and those eggs turn into those fishes. How did those eggs turn into those fishes? So I didn't do anything to actually bring those things to
Yes.
life.
Yes.
And so in that way, when I think about it, there's not much that I did there.
Mm.
And again, like the one someone listening to this could say, "Hey, what's that now?"
Mm.
Now, when they when someone is listening to this beyond the words, when they're seeing beyond the words of what is being shared, there's some universal energy, if I may call it, which is doing something, and and there is this balance that's happening in the world. And so even as we speak now, my sound is reaching someone's ears due to some technology, and we didn't do anything about the technology.
Yeah,
how
yeah.
how much ever, like, I keep thinking about, okay, is the microphone close enough to my mouth, like, am I sounding clear, like, is the audio level right, like, all those like those things go in my head, yet but all of this is happening without much effort from me.
Mm.
That is, when I think about it, it's, how do I say, sometimes I get goosebumps.
Mm.
What could that be?
Mm. Yeah. I think
Hmm.
just as you spoke there, what came to me is something we spoke in one of our last courses was the difference between familiar um, and ordinary. We think something is ordinary because it's familiar,
Mm.
uh, but so you see a carrot, so familiar, it's ordinary, and yet um, how does it happen? There's a seed, and there's all the information in that seed required to create carrot. It doesn't ever grow into an apple or
True.
a tomato. The information in the seed. It knows it's got everything it needs to become a carrot. And we couldn't make that. I mean, we could maybe do something artificial, but not truly. We just tap into that um, life force, I suppose, that has intelligence of some sort. It has a unfolding of some sort, and we know when something's alive as when something's not alive. We recognise that, and that when something's alive, there is a kind of intelligence to it that's beyond logic. I'm not sure a carrot does logic. I'm not sure carrot knows its times tables or whatever, but it knows how to become a carrot. Uh, and it's so familiar that it becomes ordinary. But it's not ordinary, it's extraordinary. Yeah.
Mm.
So to me, it sounds like we are pointing to the source of everything, um, the intelligence behind everything, the energy behind everything. Again, many words to point at the same thing. Though we say there are three principles, technically there's just one principle, which is the intelligence behind everything. What came up for me as I was listening to both of you is I was watching this movie called Mulan. It's a Disney movie, a relatively new movie, um, and the core of the movie, in a way, for me, what stood out is it's a Chinese movie, so they talk about something called qi, and qi, to my understanding, is the energy which is in every living being. Okay, um, the pure energy comes through if you allow it to come through, and if you don't recognize that, then you could be looking outside for power. You can be searching for something outside. Okay. So what I beautifully noticed in that movie is they were pointing at this energy which is inside of us, with which we are born with, which had no label before even we were named. This baby had this energy, and that intelligence already knows how to keep us alive, and things which come through us. Yet there is this meaning making ability which we have, with which we kind of label the world, we kind of sense make. It's like the blind man trying to figure out, okay, what is this? Okay, let me give this a label. Yeah. So to be our logic, our intellect is like it tries to label so that it can recognize the next time it's at the same place. But that's not the it's a label, because there's something beyond the label. Yeah. um, because the label of any product does not define the product. It is just a way of recognizing the product.
Mm.
So as much as we are saying go beyond words, go beyond logic, there is, so what's before? I think, to me, that makes more sense now. What's before all of that? Okay, where does logic come from? What's happening in and around? um, Another way I would say that is the zoom out effect. uh, the zoom out effect of looking life, where to me it seems, the view seems much more clearer without a tool like a binocular, or a microscope, or or any tool, a camera. Yeah. Effortlessly looking through naked eyes, because our naked eyes are built to see not just one thing, many things. Okay. So to me, the principles are pointing to what is available, unfolding, happening now, beyond logic. And we have an ability to see that. That's the beauty of it. Okay. See that not through the logic lens, but through our deeper sense. Like, for example, I know both of you guys are alive right now. Now that's a sense. It's not, it's beyond logic. It's sense. Okay? You can sense when somebody is alive or not alive. And, yeah. So we have that ability to see that aliveness.
So what if someone is opening their eyes and sleeping? Would you still know that you're alive?
I think so.
Mm.
And then we have this ability to create through our own perceptions, our own creativity, like a mini Pixar studio inside us. uh, but the point, I think, when you know the source, everything else kind of makes sense. Otherwise, nothing makes sense. Okay.
Mm.
I can get caught up with the meaning of what the word I am recognizing. Okay.
I think, oh, sorry, you carry on.
No, go on, Liz. Yeah.
Uh, I think when I first heard the principles, I was confused. And yet, very quickly, I thought I knew what it meant, what these principles were. And then I dismissed them. And then I revisited from a very different way of looking rather than trying to understand it intellectually. Because I did, it was like, yes, so mind is the energy behind all life. You could call it nature, you could call it life force, you could call it whatever. It's life. And consciousness is an ability to be aware of life, to have an awareness of what's going on. And the third principle of thought is our ability to think. It's the ability to think. It's not the particular thoughts, but the ability to think, and as a creative force, how we think is how we see the world. Now, I've been studying NLP for a long time, so in a way that made perfect sense. What I didn't see was what that meant in reality for how I experience life. But then I began to see that circumstances. I'm in a particular circumstance at every moment, and I'm aware of that in some way. But my awareness is through my own creation, my own thinking, my own interpretation. It's not absolute. The same circumstance, 10 different people, 10 different experiences. They will not be exactly the same. And so that it pointing towards me being the creator of my experience, my unique experience. And even then I began to see that, and that didn't, it's like, oh, yeah, okay, kind of know that. It wasn't until I was in a moment in a conversation with someone when I actually saw we were having a disagreement and it was getting slightly heated. And in that moment, I saw, my emotional response to this has nothing to do with them. That's a mirage. Because if someone else was sitting here, they wouldn't be having this reaction. I'm creating this within me. I create my version of my experience, of all the possible experiences I could be creating, of all the possible interpretations I could be making. I'm uniquely making whichever one I am. And what I saw in that moment was, up until that point, I'd been trying to create an enjoyable experience of life by trying to make the outside how I want it. So if things outside of me in my circumstances are how I want them, then I will feel good. And what I saw in that moment is, no, it's the other way around. My circumstances are not the source of my experience. The source of my experience is my interpretation of my circumstances in any moment, my thinking about my circumstances in any moment. And when I saw that, I saw the independence between circumstance and experience. And then it just felt very, over time, it became very freeing because I recognized I don't have to control the external to try to create some kind of internal. And when I began to experience that independence, I just naturally made less and less sense to be creating unpleasant experiences for myself. I mean, I still do sometimes. But it didn't seem to make sense to do that. It didn't seem to make sense to stay in that kind of feeling for any length of time. And it wasn't an effort, it just purely came from seeing how it worked. And having seen how it worked, it's like, oh, well, why would I continually buy into a negative interpretation? Now, not to say that there aren't difficult things going on and to notice them and interpret and go, actually, what do I need to do here? But still to recognize any fear or anxiety or happiness or joy are my interpretation, my creative process. And as a result of that, I often I spend more time in nice feelings. I don't try to, but I just seem to. And as a result of that, bizarrely, it seems almost like the world reorganizes itself. I suppose because maybe I'm more pleasant to be around. I don't know. But my relationships are much more, are richer. Just everything is richer. And yeah, so, and what I tried for so long to understand it intellectually, mind, conscious, thought. But it was in a moment when I saw the implications of it that it really came to life for me. Don't know if that makes sense.
I'll tell you what happened to me now as you are sharing, Leslie. I remember for a long time, Mudassir and I we were sharing a program called Embracing the Differences, right? And I remember we shared it even in France, right?
Mm,
And I remember when Mudassir shared, so there would be something that would have happened where I am a witness to that. Mudassir is a witness to that. Both of us have experienced the same thing. My experience of that moment and Mudassir's experience of that moment is so different.
mm,
And when I listen to him, I know I can kind of agree that yes, that is the truth. I know, having lived that moment from my lens, I know what I have experienced is also true.
mm,
Now, how could there be two different, uh, if I may call it, a viewpoint or taste of the same experience? Now, I kind of got the answer to that as you are sharing now.
mm,
That it's not. Uh, how do I say? We live in the feelings of our thoughts, and that is something that I am noticing now very fresh.
mm,
Mm.
mm. Can you say a bit more?
Like for example, when Mutasir shared that there were a lot of moments when we were growing up where I would I would use him as a tool for entertainment for me. I would I would I would I would hit him. I would play with him, and every time he rebelled or like he resisted, I enjoyed it. It gave me a high. All right. So I have been living in the feeling of that thought that, hey, this is giving me an absolute pleasure.
Mm.
Now when I listen to Mutas share the same thing, because I remember every time I did this, and depending on how much pleasure that I was looking for out of that moment, sometimes Mudassir would scream, and if my dad was at home, he would have to intervene, and uh, I would get whipped with his leather belt.
Oh,
And when I actually hear when I heard Mudassir's version of it, he never enjoyed those moments
mm,
as a kid back then.
mm,
Now, right now, I understand that he's living in the feelings of his thought, and I have been living in the feelings of my thought.
mhm.
All right, and my dad was living in the feelings of his thought.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
For him, it was that his Sunday siesta got disturbed because of the younger boy yelling at the top of his voice.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm noticing fresh for me.
Mm,
I have heard of this line, like we live in the feelings of our thought.
yeah.
And as you shared now, I am actually seeing a different, how do I say, in the principles world, you say, how can you experience that for self?
Mhm.
And what do you see for yourself? And this is what
Yeah,
I'm seeing right
fresh.
now.
Yeah, like
Yes,
something fresh, not something from the past, something new.
something new.
Yeah.
This is what I'm seeing right now for me.
Mm. As
Mm.
you're saying, I get a sense of if you believe that to get that pleasure, then you kind of have to antagonize your little brother. Of course, it's going to make sense to antagonize your little brother because you get pleasure, you see whatever. But when you begin to see, oh no, that pleasure's available. It's not about him. It's about my
Yes.
thinking. I don't actually have to antagonize him to get that feeling. It's the feeling I want. It's not really to antagonize him. It's the feeling I want. So, it becomes less important to how you interact with the outside world in a way, because we're always looking for a feeling.
Mm.
And all feelings are available to us at any time. And my experience of when we settle into more of the pleasurable feelings more often, life just gets easier. Things, fresh thinking is more likely for me to arise in that space.
Mm.
Um, but when we think in order to get that a particular feeling, we have to somehow manipulate the outside world. Of course, we're going to do that. That makes perfect sense. When we see, oh, it's not actually coming from the outside world, then actually we're very free.
Mm.
It's coming from our thinking, our interpretation.
Mm.
But the illusion is so strong, it does seem like antagonizing your little brother is the route to happiness.
I'm not sure if you guys have watched this movie, Beautiful Minds.
Mm,
I That movie is something which I think that beautifully describes what we are really pointing visually. Okay? In case somebody has not watched the movie, this is about a guy who, I don't know, what is it called? what was his condition? Mental condition? I don't
It
remember.
was schizophrenia.
Right. Okay. So, which means he can see live people in and around, which he thinks are live people, but in reality, these are just his thought created characters, which he can visually see live. They go wherever he goes, they speak to him, they abuse him, etc., etc. So his life gets so impacted that uh, the so-called normal people kind of are afraid of him. Okay?
Mm.
Now, if I put myself in that position, like I have lived with some thoughts like that for ages, like a thought that I'm not good enough. And I've given life to that thought, and I had my own ways of interpreting that thought. And that seemed so real that I did everything just to ensure that I am good enough.
Mm.
So, which means I went on learning skills, tools, techniques, certifications, achieved to get promotions with the intention that I'm going to feel better by getting this certification. I'm going to feel better, etc., etc. Okay. Now, like you guys have already been pointing towards such beautifully looking inside, looking at the source of where this is coming from. So the way it appears to me now is my world begins and ends with me. Now that doesn't mean I am an isolated being. That means that I am life coming through me. So if I'm able to see the reality of how life happens inside me, which I'm living now, and that's only coming through me, then for a moment, from a victim thinking that life is happening to me, that I am I'm a victim of my circumstances, or Muzammil is I'm a victim of his behavior. From that, there's freedom in noticing, oh no, that's not possible.
Mm.
He did what he did, but that was just innocence in his behavior. I see that now very clearly.
Mm.
At the same time, here's the beauty. It happened when I was probably not even in my teens, but there are some bits which I'm kind of seeing, oh no, this is not that guy. This is not that Muzammil. Okay? How that is still real, those thoughts still come, and
Mm.
my behavior towards him, there is this veil in between. So to me, there is this freedom. I think Les, you mentioned the word freedom. I mean, the only the if I have to label what I have really found is the only constant which I found, because everything else is changing. I can see that. Okay, circumstances change. I can't do anything about it. Okay, like Corona, etc., etc. I can't do anything about that. Okay, I don't have to,
Mm.
because there is this biggest constant, which is I'm aware that things are happening. That doesn't change. My thinking change, but there's part of me which is noticing the thinking. There's this awareness of me which I'm aware of,
Mm.
which is constant, which has always been constant. So that gives me the freedom that I don't have to have Muzammil around me, or the promotion or the job or anything for that matter. I wish for a better future.
Mm.
So the constant that there is this gift in me which is constant. It doesn't change.
Mm.
And that's a gift. And that's a gift everybody has. Again, okay, seeing that,
Mm.
then I'm able to see through my veil of my thinking. I'm able to see somebody, hear somebody beyond the veil of their words and thinking. And there comes this beautiful, I think Rumi said this, there is a field beyond right and wrong, and I'll meet you there. In my humble opinion, I think he was not talking about a field outside. I think he was talking about a field inside,
Mm.
where alive, anything alive, you can connect with that anything alive, whether a human being or a bird or a flower, and you can feel one with that. If that makes sense. If that doesn't make sense, uh, then you can enjoy just water, just water, the drink which we think is, it's just water, or it can just be the significance of water. I don't know if that makes sense to somebody listening. To me, it just makes so much sense. You can just enjoy that sip. Now, this doesn't happen to me all the time. A caveat here is seeing through the veil. so so yeah, it's like I'm watching a movie. I wake up to the movie. There are times I'm stuck in the movie. Yeah. Just knowing that the Pixar Studios is inside me gives me the freedom of relaxing, just relaxing.
Mm. Yeah, I think you're saying you no longer kind of feel a victim of circumstance. Really, it's circumstance is circumstance, and sometimes circumstances are as we would like them,
Hmm.
and sometimes they're not. Um, Full stop.
Hmm.
Circumstance is circumstance. Um, that is not the source of our experience because we have to interpret what's happening to get an experience in a way, and that offers so much flexibility. My experience is that as I see it, when I see it, of course, don't see it all the time, but when I see that, um, um, I I find it's like I don't take things personally. If something isn't as I wish it to be, it doesn't feel personal. And within then I'm it's like I don't then have to deal with my own insecurities because it doesn't seem personal. So I tend to be much more present to what is actually happening, and often more flexible in how I respond. Um, because when something seems very personal, in my experience, then I want to defend myself. Perhaps if it's not like I want it to be, I have to defend myself. My own insecurities start to kind of come into my thinking, and but when I see, they're just doing what they're doing, well, the circumstances are as they are. You know, life isn't doing something to me. You know, my circumstances aren't doing something to me. But if the circumstances aren't as I would prefer them, then I have the choice to play in that playground to see if I can nudge things in the direction I'd like. That's fine. It becomes more of a playground. It's like, oh well, I would prefer circumstances to be like this. Let's see. Let's see if that's possible. But I know it doesn't have to be for my well-being, and that's for me where the freedom lies.
Hmm. I'm just curious if there are any questions, Mus, in case you are already noticing. We're coming to the
Mm.
close, very,
Yeah.
just in case. The
I'm curious if
question,
we've got any viewers actually.
since we are on Zoom, sure, you will
I
see.
can see that the
It's
number
always
is
nice
varying
chatting anyway.
between 5 to 3 to 1 is what I'm seeing.
Great,
The
doesn't
number
matter.
keeps varying, yeah.
Okay. So the recording is going to be available for people to watch
Yes.
it and ask
Yes.
questions. So the only question I have, which comes up, okay, so what?
Mm.
Knowing all of this,
Mm.
so what? So what pops up for me is the choice, the freedom, and the flexibility to do whatever I want to do without um, thinking. For example, like the exploration of the book which we are writing together. Okay? I would not have thought about writing a book earlier, or how will I write the book? Okay, the stress of writing the book. Now it just feels like words are coming through us. It's becoming such an enriching journey because it's not coming from the known source, it's coming from the unknown source, but through me. Because when I read those words, when we explore together, it feels like, oh, this now it has a very different um, quality to it. Okay, there's something very fresh, refreshing. Okay, so doing becomes refreshing, not a chore. Living becomes I pay more attention to living, okay, as much as making tea to drinking tea. Okay. Um, so the doing becomes as much as enjoyable than what I get out of it. And I think the last bit to me is you can choose to be who you are, not hide behind identities. Uh, like, for example, I have my identities which come in the way of my, okay, I am this, but I'm not that. I'm a coach, but I'm not sure if um, if I want if I call it as a cleaner. Okay, I love cleaning these days. Okay, so identity of a cleaner, cleaning anything. So the freedom of being anything, that makes sense to me.
Mm. Yeah. So I'm thinking, so what my so what? For me, seeing that my circumstances aren't the source of my well-being has been so liberating, and in a way, I think one of my concerns early on was, well, if I don't have to do anything in the world to be happy and contented, why would I bother? Will I not just become a lazy slob and spend all day in bed? Um, but actually, my experience has been absolutely the opposite. Not my I, it's almost the opposite in that it feels like my insecurities are no longer an obstacle to taking action. I recognize any insecurities coming up as thoughts that are passing through my system, and they don't relate to the reality. And so I feel much more freer to act, much more freer to do things, and to enjoy it as play almost, because my well-being's already accounted for. Then to go and it feels life feels much more of a playground or an adventure. That's not to say I'm not going to face really painful circumstances at time. Everyone does. But even in the most painful of circumstances, I feel more able to be present with what is. And in circumstances that I want, just to play. So in the most difficult circumstances and in the best of circumstances, it almost feels like I have the best chance to make the best of it. I think I'm much more productive than I used to be.
Mm.
Right, so I'm gonna very quickly ask. So we have 2 minutes to close. So any closing thoughts? So the
No.
very
What would you say? So what, Mus?
Yeah.
What is your so what?
Yeah.
so
In
what
terms of
meaning?
learning
So
about the
what
principles.
meaning? So knowing about all that we are pointing towards, the principles. Okay, all right, this is other principle. This is how it works. Fine, makes sense. Okay, so what? What can I do about it?
Yeah,
What
so
can
you
I?
for people listening, it's like, yeah,
Yeah,
I hear that, but so what? What
yeah,
So what?
difference has
Yeah.
it made for you?
The so what for me would be being peaceful.
Mm.
Peaceful in what way? Uh, I noticed that we have disagreements. I'm actually taking this slightly global. All right. I noticed that there are disagreements that we experience at a personal level, at a policy level with other colleagues. Like at like states don't agree, countries don't agree. Like leaders don't agree with stuff. Like we see that all over. We see that as a common theme all around the world. Just to know that that disagreement is not the individual himself.
Mm.
It's a function of his thoughts and feelings.
Mm.
And when I'm able to look through those thoughts and feelings into the, if I may call it, quote unquote, the diamond inside that individual, that brings peace.
Mm.
Wow, that's the so what for me.
Mm. It's beautiful.
Yes,
that's a beautiful
that's
place to
Yeah.
pause. Yeah,
pause.
Absolutely.
diamonds in all of us. Seeing the diamonds in all of us.